So excited to be here. Are we ready? Are we ready to get the party started, guys? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. A resounding yes, even from Joe in Miami.
You're there.
Let's bring it. Welcome, everyone. My name is, for those that don't know me, my name is Jackie Fernandez Verdesia, and I'm a director of client development at Ben. So happy to be here with you all to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. What a plug that I have to give to my friends and the DE&I team. We're celebrating culture, diversity, and inclusion is super important to us at Ben. And we have an amazing DE&I team who, alongside, passionate Ben colleagues, regularly volunteer to bring awareness to the rich culture of our community. So shout out to Vanessa, Asia, and Tiffany for helping with today. And that being said, guys, today, friends, you are all in for a treat. I am honored to be celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month with a fantastic panel of industry experts. You guys are the best. You guys are like killing it, okay? These folks are marketing, sales, and brand leaders who over the past 20 plus years have been making an impact across media and entertainment. We're lucky to have them here to share their career experiences and insights on how they're all supporting Latinos in the industry. And as my internal colleagues know, I like to bring the sexy. And we're going to bring the sexy today, right, guys? Yeah? Are we sounding yes again? Okay.
Give it my best shot.
With that, I'd love to pass it on to my esteemed panelists to tell us their name, a little bit about who they are, what they do, and a favorite memory of growing up Latino in a Latino household. Let's start with Sumi.
So, Simi Keys, VP of Creative Partnerships at NBC Universal. In my role, I do what is basically ad sales marketing, and we work with brands to create partnerships, do everything from program positioning to responding to RFPs to activation. So we work alongside our ad sales counterparts. I've been in the media industry and specifically in Hispanic for about 2 decades, really spending my time here within NBC Universal, but focused on Telemundo, the Spanish language broadcaster. In the last few years, I've also added NBC Entertainment to my remit. So now I actually work across both, which is really exciting and allows me to be in rooms that I wasn't part of before, which is what really excites me. And I want to talk a lot, about that in this conversation. I am China, Latina, Americana. So my name doesn't actually convey it, but I am Latina, hablo español. And then my name is a combination of my Latinidad with my Chinese side with my married side. And then a memory from growing up in a Latina household is definitely the music on Saturday morning, waking up to salsa and getting ready to get the party started very early on.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Sumi. And thank you for giving a little bit about your cultural background, because not many people know that there's a thing called China Latina, which I love that you were able to talk to. And Roger Salazar, my friend, who I know from my neighborhood, who is an incredibly smart marketer, former P&G, former Conagra. I'm tooting your horn.
Thank you. My name is Roger Salazar. I'm a founder and president of Gradient CMX, an organization that I recently started with the team. CMX stands for Culture Marketing Experience. As Jackie said, I've been in marketing for many years on the brand management side as well as the agency side, with experiences working for Procter & Gamble. I worked in the baby care and professional beauty categories when I was there, obviously with food and Conagra Foods, and then on the agency sides within our public group. So again, it's over 25 years experience. The range of my experience is, been both on general market and multicultural with a specific emphasis, obviously my passion area with Hispanic marketing. A lot of that generated with projects that started early in my career, which I, more and more as I developed and grew my experience and working with different organizations, multicultural became much more important. And obviously the Hispanic population and its growth trajectory has become a strong and high focus growth market for many organizations, and I've been fortunate enough to work on a lot of projects related to that marketplace, as well as working directly with organizations who really want to tap into the Latino market here in the United States. So again, it's over about 25 years experience working in that area. My background, born and raised in Los Angeles, but my family, both my parents were from Nicaragua, which is in Central America. They came here starting in the late 1940s. Mother, father came in the late 1950s, but the family's been there a long time. But we've had, deep roots within the Nicaraguan and the broader Hispanic Latino community in Los Angeles. So that's my cultural background, my herencia. In terms of favorite, you said Saturday morning.
A memory of growing up Latino.
Well, I think like Sumi, I think it seemed like there was, early in the morning, the radio somehow came on and the music was playing, having the café con leche. So for me, in terms of a childhood memory, was waking up to café con leche, música, and, which is a staple of the Nicaraguan community. It was el gallo pinto. So gallo pinto, cafecito, and música.
Qué lindo. Awesome. Amazing. Now, the man who in our Hispanic media industry really doesn't need an introduction. I mean, you don't. Everyone knows Joe Bernard. Everyone knows. Maybe not the people at Bend, but everyone knows. And founder of Mundo's, chief revenue officer at NGL, just partnered with Me Too. So speaking for you, as I usually singing your accolades, and I'll let you kind of introduce yourself.
Sure. So hi, everyone. We're excited to share as much as I can, tip the scales a little further into the Hispanic market. And Joe Bernard, I'm currently the chief equity holder, which is the largest media in video right now. Most of you may have 2 months that we've acquired Me Too platform for the U.S. Hispanic market. My founding partner, John Leguizamo, the very next superpower in the U.S. Hispanic space. A lot of opportunity today stands on the heels of years, 17 of which I spent in Mundo with Yumi, when it's the incredible that we have out there. I'll share with you all I can about the market. One small factor, hopefully you guys can hear clearly. Thumbs up.
Joe, let me interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
And guys, for everyone, Joe's in Miami. He braved the hurricane to be in Miami, and so he's in a hotel. And unfortunately the Wi-Fi isn't as strong as we like. So maybe Joe, go to your phone and see if that works better.
While he does that, I think.
So
yeah,
you get started. Yeah.
Let's get started.
Just so I could probably fill in a little bit there for Joe, and he's co-founder of Me Too, and is currently a chief revenue officer of and the NGL Collective, which is a new generation Latino collective now based in New York. And I think what he was saying is that they've done a merger with Me Too, or an acquisition of Me Too, which has created a broader, larger media company oriented towards the Latino Hispanic audience and marketplace here in the United States. So he's got plenty of experience. His partner is John Leguizamo. Joe Bernard is definitely a legend within the marketplace. So hopefully we can get a clear voice coming through. He's a trooper being in Florida at the same time.
Yeah, super passionate. Let's see if we can give him a second. And Sumi, the Latin billboards, huh?
Yeah,
that's happening
and
tonight.
Fun fact, I was supposed to be down there in Miami, and I decided not to go. So I'm here in New York. But yeah, the Latin billboards are tonight. Actually, they decided full steam ahead once the program saw that the hurricane was not necessarily going to be a direct hit. As you can imagine, so many months go into putting together what is in essence 3 hours of live television. So full steam ahead. It's going to be a really great show. Like I was mentioning to you, Jackie, when we were getting together. I think what I love about the Latin billboards is that it's a 3-hour concert of a mix of the best of Latin music. If there was ever anyone who wanted to sample a variety, because there is a variety of music within Latin music, the Latin billboards is a great place to sample everything from salsa to bachata to reggaeton, you name it. So we have that tonight.
Can't wait. I'll be watching. So Joe, say hello, Joe.
How's that? Does that sound better?
Yes. Positive.
I did my best Joe Bernard impersonation there for you. I filled in a couple of your points, but
That's good.
you'll forgive me.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
The group at large. Sorry for the delay.
Oh, good. So you know what, guys? Let's kick it off. Let's get started. We have there's a fun topic, right? That's caused a lot of, I guess, a little confusion, some controversy over the years. What do we call ourselves? Latinx, Hispanics, or Latinos, right? What is the proper and inclusive term for referencing our community? And maybe is there more than one? I don't know. What do you think, Sumi?
From my perspective, I identify as Latina. That is what feels natural to me. Spanish was my first language, so I think I definitely had an affinity to connect with the language as well. I don't think that there's going to be ever one term that basically takes care of everyone's needs. And I do appreciate, even though Latinx is a relatively new term,
Mm-hmm.
it's still not necessarily used, by everyone. I do appreciate what it's looking to accomplish and how we saw it, being born. People who were not necessarily feeling represented by the existing terms, who may not necessarily have been wanting to identify with a gender identity, or folks who, English might be your first language, and so they don't have the same connection to the Latino, the language mechanics. And I think, honestly, it's going to keep evolving. I don't think there's ever going to be just one term that everyone agrees. A lot of it is definitely very much defined by our journey and our own individual identity and history and journey. So I think as new generation and the younger generation rises, they will continue to be shifts. What about you,
Thank you,
Joe and
Sumi.
Roger?
Yeah, no, I've actually addressed this question with some of my clients. A lot of organizations are asking, like, how should we, address this market and not hit the landmines that they're trying to avoid? So Hispanic tends to be the most accepted. Latinx is still a term that for many Hispanics or Latinos, I prefer to use the term Latino, is somewhat filled with controversy and some polarization. But Hispanic tends to be the one that's most accepted by all the groups. We did a couple of studies I've done with clients came to the same conclusion. The Pew Research has done this work. Think Now has done this work and looked into the question. Latinx has a place. I'm truly a big believer in that. For me, as especially being from Gen X, when I first heard the term, I thought this was like, oh, is this the Generation X for Latinos? And it really wasn't. Once I got a better sense of the definition of the term and its origination, which was really it got its genesis for Latinos that were coming from gender neutral binary identification that were using Latinx, which I think is absolutely correct. I think anybody should, if they feel that that is a term that is intrinsic to their identity and is in sense organic, I think it can and should be used. There are many terms within the Hispanic community that are out there. I think just to give you a little bit of background in terms of the research that we did, what we found, Hispanic was the best universal term. We did that 2 different studies, along with, like I said, these organizations that did the other studies. Latino was closely followed right behind, I think, for most people because of the Latin America connotations. Latino seems to feel more natural. Hispanic was the genesis out of the census that the U.S. government did starting back in the 1970s. So I think the controversy with that term has been that it was kind of imposed by the government, in particular the Census Bureau, to identify a group of people that up to that point had never used the term Hispanic. From that, you have Hispanics who identify by country of origin. So they'll say, Mexican American, Mexicano Americano, Cubano Americano, Nicaraguan Americano. So I think that's also very common within the community when we identify each other. Jackie, you're Cubana Americana, I'm Nicaraguense Americano. I think that's an area that many Hispanics are comfortable within the community. And then you have some other terms like Chicano, for example, which was very popularized in the 1960s, mainly Mexican Americans in the Los Angeles area, and kind of grew with the subsequent Latin generations, Hispanic generations of Mexican descent that have picked up Chicano. And I think Latinx kind of falls within that pathway that Chicano did. It was a group of folks that were here in the U.S. that didn't quite feel either from here or there. They say Spanish in the aquí, in the allá. And we're trying to find an identity and Latinx was born. Now, sorry I'm giving a bit of a long-winded answer, because what we really, when we dove deeper into Latinx, we realized that the genesis of Latinx is to what Sumi was alluding to, which is this progression, this journey. And as you look at the Hispanic population, there have been significant changes that have happened, you know, in its history. The Hispanic community has been here for hundreds of years in this country, or at least in this part of the world, in North America. And as you look at it and say within the last 50 to 60 years, you've seen a tremendous change within the, you know, initial immigrant population generation to second generation to third generation. So I think Latinx is a natural and organic genesis of especially a second and third generation Hispanic population that's much more conscious of their identity vis-a-vis the other groups here in the United States. So as far as its acceptance as a, you know, universally within the Latino Hispanic community, the numbers don't pan out. Latinx is probably not the accurate term to use for as a catch-all pan Hispanic term for the community, but it certainly has a strong place, and one that I certainly see it continuing much in the vein of how Chicano has for the last 40 years.
Thank you, Roger. Joe, what say you?
Look, I think it's a tough question. You know, what is right? You know, Latinx doesn't have the tongue. You know, the Hispanic language has had male and female in certain ways that the language was constructed, and so therefore, you know, that about if you want to be true to the culture was built on a language that was built for female terms, and maybe there's some essence to the Latino and Latina term that ultimately over time the right term will sort of fall in, and the wrong. When you think about the African American market, you know, there are multiple ways that you're Black Music Month, it's Black History Month, and it's also the African American market. You know, there's two terms there. Yeah. At one point, you know, years and years ago, there was a census to define African Americans. You know, Negro was one, and others, and ultimately, for the right terms then, and they ultimately fell off because you realize that wasn't appropriate journey. And I think the same thing will happen with U.S. Hispanics in terms of what is right, what is wrong. You know, they're playing around with Latin, right? So you take the O off and you don't add an X, you just go Latin, which of course is pronounced Latin already. It's not real. It's like all over the place, and therefore I think it's nowhere. And ultimately, I think the safest place is U.S. Hispanic, right? And then I think the other big key thing is that, you know, while I identify myself as U.S. Hispanic teen, I mostly self-identify by country of origin. I'm Puerto Rican American. There's a lot of strength in that as well. So I think somewhere in there, but right now, it's all fair game until we figure out what the right comfortable term.
Makes perfect sense, guys. And it's all, you know, it's all an evolution, right? And I think at the end of the day, you also have to know your audience and know who your consumer is, right? Because a Gen Xer, you maybe want to be referred to as Hispanic. For us, is a younger millennial, maybe, or Gen Z is more Latinx. We can probably agree on that, right? Awesome.
Yeah, I love sure
generational
stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah. Latinx, absolutely. Gen Z is the one that most, and to a certain extent, millennials, Latinx is the most accepted. I mean, it's accepted the most by them.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of passion on the subject, so definitely internally at Ben, we're like, which is it, Jackie? Latinx or Hispanic? I'm like, depends on who you talk to. So let's move on. Let's dig in a little bit into your careers in Hispanic Latinx marketing media. Would love to hear how you've been leveraging your influential roles to educate others on the importance of our communities, or simply like how you've been influencing, you know, young talent and elevating young talent. If you can share a little bit more on that, Sumi, what are your thoughts?
So in regards to career, because I am part of a big organization, my role is both to work on the actual, again, proposals, the work itself in the day-to-day, working with the clients. But a big part of also what I do is being an internal advocate for Spanish media, Spanish language media, the Hispanic marketplace. As a Latina, I can also help represent and give more color to conversations in rooms. And again, I take that very seriously. I think there's still a lot of room. There's still a lot of rooms that we're not part of, and that we need to continue to grow the talent, which then leads me to one of the ways that I have invested in the 2 decades of my career to impact the community is exactly spending time and making time for early career individuals. As an immigrant who pulled myself by the bootstraps, who really had to work really hard for the career that I have, I am very cognizant that there's a lot of folks who don't come from privileged backgrounds, are entering the workforce and may not necessarily have advocacy or mentorship or be in circles where you can lean on people who have been in the industry for a long time, who can really help you. So to me, especially again for the last 2 decades, I make time, I reach out, and I spend time coaching and mentoring those early career individuals. And funny enough, I've noticed that it's usually, even though I make myself available to everyone and I'm an open book in that regard, it tends to be people of color and predominantly women who really seek me out and who really take advantage of the opportunity. I think that probably it's a reflection, right? Like they see themselves in me to a certain degree. And that's probably been one of the most rewarding parts in my career. In regards to marketing, again, as being part of NBC Universal, a big part of what I'm doing on an ongoing basis, and again now as part of NBC, specifically entertainment, is really being a voice for multicultural and for our audience across any of the internal conversations and decisions that are being made.
Wonderful, Sumi. So great to have. I'm sure you're so valued, right, by the younger Latinas at NBCU Telemundo. To have you as a mentor, as a guide, certainly wish we had more when we were younger, but it's great that that's changing, right? So Joe, I'll go to you. How are you? I'm sure you're mentoring and educating and influencing a ton.
Yeah, look, we built our company, all of our Latino younger folks, and we employ about 115 young Hispanics who all they can build and create their own dreams. That's what the business has been built on. Typically for me, I'm one of those stories where I came out of that big machine, carve a path not just for myself, but in a weird way, carve a path that others could. I've been lucky and with the grace of God, successfully built a business, saw value in and purchased it. And now, in a weird way, I'm sort of proving you can indeed have an idea, build it, grow it, and run it around and make a bigger opportunity out of it, right? No different than what Jay-Z and all the music guys have done, taking a rap career, right? And then ultimate ownership of products and property. And now these guys are, multimillionaires. In the Hispanic market, you don't see that often, if ever, right? There might be 5 CEOs, almost no people on board seats at companies, right? Like, and I'm on the board, I'm on the cap table, and I have the ability to affect the company, to employ, support, impact, fellow Latinos who might be following in that path. And the goal of the company as we move forward is to build that platform even better, support minority owned, continue to build an incredible platform where everybody can play in our laboratory and ultimately produce the next phase of both the marketplace that supports executives that can ultimately move forward and be those rooms that, Sumi mentioned they weren't there. I mean, I remember being in budget meetings for the Hispanic business unit and in the room, and I'm the only Hispanic there, and I looked around the room and said, this is for me, and I decided to kind of make a change, and now we're trying to affect change. So that's the issue. Everybody knows it. The more successful we get, and then once we're in those positions, then the movie roles, the marketing, all of those things will start falling in line to be more evaluated in terms of audience segments. And as we all know, the multicultural market segment, not very valuable, inclusive of Asian, LGBT, and the African American marketplace.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for telling your story and how you've kind of risen through the ranks and have made things happen. And you're in an incredible position of influence, right? Where you have a real seat at the table and you can make things happen. And there's more of us growing in that space. And Roger, tell us about, how you grew up kind of in the space and how you're influencing. You definitely influencing. You have a daughter who you're influencing.
Yeah, she's 26 in a couple of weeks. Just reminded me. Working on her master's at Johns Hopkins, so it's very proud of her. I'm inspired by Joe as well. Although I've worked in large organizations for many years and worked and doing my consulting business, really kind of venturing out and actually putting together a team to start an organization at this stage is it's daunting, it's scary, it's exciting, and it's always good to talk to people who've been there before. And so, I would certainly lean on people like Joe. Myself, I speak that, in a very humble way, but at the same time, making myself available to others, in my journey, starting, I think, for me, I was very fortunate to have started my marketing career at Procter & Gamble, which, there are a lot of fine organizations, but I certainly put them at, if not at the very top, near the top, for organizations that work to mentor, develop, people from different and unique backgrounds. I think, really a testament to that organization is really building, looking at people's, I don't want to call them strength and weaknesses, but for lack of a term, strength and weaknesses, but figuring out like how to really develop people's way to make themselves better than they are now. And I think inquisitiveness was something that was taught to me by that organization. Is like always question, never settle for, what's given to you at face value. Keep seeking. And I think a lot of that ways that translates into the Hispanic community. Because you have a lot of people, that whether they're first generation just got here or maybe they're second generation kids of immigrants, in a lot of ways they have not had the experiences, whether it's personal experiences going through education or professional experience working in organizations, that they can say, oh yeah, my uncle or my father or my cousin worked there, because in a lot of cases they're the first ones in their family. So I'm cognizant of that because I've had people that have helped me, and so I've helped them throughout my career, whether it's working on a project at P&G for Love's Diapers, which I worked on, or working in a large go-to-market strategy for a big insurance company was one of my clients. I seek out people at all levels of the organizations to mentor and to counsel them. And that also goes, a little bit to Joe's point, it's great when you succeed, but sometimes it's very lonely at the top. I think when you start realizing it's just a few of you when you're the only one in the room. So I make it an effort to really speak to managers and leaders within organizations that may not be Hispanic, but certainly have the desire to work and mentor multicultural staff members and talent. But speaking from the Hispanic point of view, it's a numbers game. There's more. I'm very glad to see that there are many more young folks that are coming up through the ranks or are starting at organizations that are super talented. But at the very top, there are very few people and very few Hispanics, and therefore we got to lean on people who are not Hispanic to really get them to engage in developing that talent overall, because that ratio doesn't change overnight. So it's incumbent on people like myself, Joe, Sumi, you, Jackie, to work with leaders and organizations to recognize that they have a part in developing that diverse, multicultural now America.
Thank you guys. Such great insights and such great important things that you're all sharing, and truly value that. So let's move over to talk a little bit about entertainment, right? It's at Ben, we're all, very excited about the influence Latinx artists are having in entertainment. And we're aligning many of our clients with streaming and music content that resonates with this audience, right? Bad Bunny alone is conquering the world, right? What entertainment trends, particularly around Latinx culture, are you guys finding exciting?
Wow, so much.
I think
I'll hop in.
music still seems to be the powerful kind of common genre here, or artistic expression that transcends a lot of Hispanic groups, whether they're from different countries, but also has the ability to transcend beyond the Hispanic marketplace. I think music certainly is always exciting. It's always fresh, and people like Bad Bunny that show up, and I mean, boy, yeah, you're right. He's tearing up the charts. Is certainly this year, but he's been around for a few years, and it's exciting to see that new talent that's coming out and making some pretty big waves in the marketplace.
Look, what I can add to that is look, the power of his new thing, right? Ever since Daddy Yankee was a pre the Latin Billboard charts. Sorry, not even the Billboard charts have been dominated by for the better part of maybe 10 years now. It's not something that just happened because Bad Bunny is really representing the next step in the evolution of the entertainment. We're now in the music scene to get into movies. You have J Balvin getting into fashion, just like Kanye and Empire, stepping from the music scene. And so what's exciting is to see entertainers branch out outside of the initial area that they start. See a lot more of that in the coming years as those artists continue to. The place that is still the final frontier is the box office, right? And I mean, participation of Hispanics at the box office, because we know that but the reflection isn't completely there. And I think there's a lot of momentum, from our point of view, with headquarters in Hollywood and Los Angeles, and with my partner John, be a lot more lean in from the movie studios, the independent, to figure out ways of telling more compelling stories that all Hispanic talent in it. Some will be dedicated Hispanic stories. Standpoint, everybody will be able to appreciate, right? I remember, talking about Slumdog Millionaire and how that was going to be, a complete failure because, in a particular, eastern part of the world, and yet the thing wins, and all the struggle that people had within the Heights during its initial, not the movie when it came out, but when they were prepping it, and how they wanted to, change that dynamic. Ben might even have been around during the time when In the Heights was, tooling around on the Universal. They did not and could not get that movie out and made because there were impediments there. Ultimately, Lin-Manuel, succeeded. They moved them when the movie came out. And, there's arguments about how successful it was, but it definitely had a certain degree. And we're going to start seeing a lot more of those outings over the next couple of years. Next step, where you really start telling the stories. At Hispanicize, which is an event that comes out October 14th, part of Hispanic Heritage Month, we have Maza, Anthony Ramos, Melissa Barrero, 4 names that are the leading of Hispanic Hollywood talent, right? It's not George Lopez. It's not, the old guard of stars that are taking over. And if Anthony Ramos gets a hit with Transformers next year, fully open the floodgates of opportunities for them. So that's that. And then the last thing is video. That is where it's at right now. If it's not in Hollywood, right, it's happening in this YouTube, TikTok, and so on. Because for a while, as the doors have been basically basically closed, the Hispanic artist is choosing to find another distribution point, and they're doing it right in short form content that best expresses who they are. Ultimately, that will migrate over to the television and film platforms, and it's basically a matter of time.
Yeah, I know, it makes sense, and it's because we're seeing such an explosion, right, with music. I mean, Latinos are just taking over there. We would love to see more of that influence also on the TV film side, which I know John, when Joe refers to John, for those that may not know, John Leguizamo, who is one of the founding partners of right, NGL. How do we explore that and push that more to film, TV, streaming?
So can I, yeah, what I was going to add is to your question earlier, which is it all blends into this thought, is for me, what excites me is the rise of streaming platforms. Because a little bit of what you were saying, Joe, by changing the model of how content is being distributed, how content is being greenlit, right? By having more avenues of content distribution and really getting to the audience deciding what they're going to watch versus it being given to them at a certain time. It is creating a whole new host of opportunities for content creators, for content Latino stories to really get their shot on a platform, and then for the audience to show up. So I think this is where also from our perspective as a community, we do need to show up in numbers to really support content that is either, again, a Latino story or Latino casting, because at the end of the day, the numbers do speak and decisions are being made on numbers. Again, whether it be audiences, whether it be tickets sold, back to your comment about the box office, Joe. So that's really important. But for me, seeing the tectonic shifts that are happening in media right now and how much streaming is taken over, I do think that it's going to, not just yet, we're really at the precipice, but going to open up a lot of new opportunities for the Latino community. On our end, we actually have a new content brand, T Plus, that's going to be launching towards the end of the year. It's actually for Peacock, our streaming platform. And the creation of T Plus was really to fill the white space when it came to content that was created for Latinos, but not necessarily by default in Spanish. Some of the content is completely bilingual, very natural to either the cast or the subject matter. And one of the projects that's really exciting coming out of it is a reality show that is about Latino families or couples who are at a juncture in their marriage, who need to revisit whether or not they continue or not. And so these stories are universal to everyone. Anyone's going to be able to enjoy it, but the DNA of the couples are all Latinos. So a lot of their culture and their histories will play into it, but it's not a Latino show. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see when it launches on a platform like Peacock. How does the audience respond, and who shows up? Because I do think that it's a show that's going to show you can have Latino stories, Latinos will show up, but other people will also be interested and enjoy the content as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of what Joe and Sumi said. And I think an important key in all of this is streaming and streaming channels where people, where content creators, Latino content creators can place and express their work, their artistry. I think the question is how can learnings or things that have happened in music can translate to TV and film. I mean, TV and film is still, I think, and I think Sumi and Joe are probably closer to this than I am, but I suspect still falls within a kind of a predefined structure of how ideas are brought forward and agreed and green lighted, and then all the investment that goes behind it and support. Still falls kind of this traditional trajectory. Music, in a lot of ways, has been independent. I mean, music artists have had this latitude and this liberty to create their art and their content and get it out into the marketplace. Sometimes, self-publishing. So I think to the extent that we can give avenues or channels where young artists, Latino artists, and content creators can freely put their work out there. So it's a bit of the test and learn, fail and redo type of process. We need to help that within the visual arts in the same way that I think probably on the music side it's been very successful. But I think streaming platforms are going to be critical to that, because I think, the genie's out of the bottle. I think a lot of, especially Latino kids and just, well, really all Latino artists, but certainly the younger generation are now seeing that they have the ability to tell their own stories in a way that doesn't fall into what the powers that be expect the stories to be for the Hispanic community, and they're putting them out there. So to the extent that we can provide those, expand those platforms and then be able to tap them in a way that doesn't diminish the authenticity, I think would be great. But again, I defer to Joe and Sumi on that. I mean, they're closer to that type of production process than I am. But really, at the end of the day, it's about freedom of expression and having the channels that allow them to thrive.
Yeah, look, I the question is, is the cat out of the, if TV and film have been so closed doors to these creators, right, ago that I speak to, who said, I can't go to this side of the internet there, and I can't go to that side of the entertainment world because they don't see the value in bringing to the table. And what the internet ultimately did was it was the biggest democracy world, right? It gave the power to the individual, and now a lot of those creators have created those platforms, and those platforms are, there's a ton of them, right? It's not just streamers, but it's just, what they're posting on their own individual social handles and what they're putting on their YouTube. And now there's all these different, avenues, very much like the music world, where and you hear it for yourself, and that's your personal choice. And it's the same thing. If that content resonates with you, it's not being served to you at mass, right? It's put out to the masses, but not served. And, the question is, can the bigger media companies now sort of, those sheep that have escaped into the wilderness and are finding their own, and that's what, that's what the streaming platforms that come from the would agree is an attempt to try to recapture the opportunity that they once had in the 90s, and then the internet sort of broke that open. We'll see what happens. Feeling is ultimately that will then rebalance the power of where it, and perhaps some of the smaller companies become bigger and some of the big shrink a little bit, right? It's happened in all the other industries. It happened in the phone business, internet business, and the tech business, and in the media business, it hasn't exactly happened. It could very well be a thing, and that's going to be what's exciting about the next 10 years. And in a weird market, or the Latino market, will be at the front row of affecting that, which is why it's so exciting to get involved with this marketplace today, because you'll get the ROI. ROI tomorrow will be even bigger, and you need to get in on it now, or else your brand in 5 years, when Jesus comes off the mountain or whatever happens, right?
Yeah, no. If I could just add one more thing in terms of from the perspective of marketers and advertisers, they've taken notice of this, and they see it because they get a lot of people that talk about their products and their brands on whether it's TikTok or Facebook. So they've already felt this, and so when you think about from the organizations that I work with, they're like, Roger, how do we tap into that? How can I get that influencer? And in some cases, they want to find that Bad Bunny before Bad Bunny was Bad Bunny. But now it's like too late. I mean, you can't afford him, which is great for him. But there are a lot where they recognize that there are a lot of people, a lot of voices, a lot of they call them micro influencers, but there are some people that are maybe they might want to call them micro influencers because they have an audience of maybe 10, 15, maybe 40,000 people, but they have an outsized impact on how they can not only portray their own message, but potentially that of brands and companies. So the companies are seeing it. I think the entertainment industry probably should maybe take a look at how other organizations are viewing the market and saying, yeah, how do we tap into that, that influencer or that up and coming artist and give them the opportunity to really kind of, flourish. And so again, it goes back to giving the platform and recognizing that the change is already happening. And again, just to dovetail on what Joe was saying, I'm excited, and as excited as I am about how the Hispanic marketplace has evolved over the last, my professional experience in the last 25 years, but really when I look at it, 40 years, I'm even more excited about the next 10, 15, 20 years, because we're seeing a large, huge population of young, and when I say young, Hispanics under the age of 18. Every 60 seconds, a Latino turns 18 in this country, and that number is huge. And they're filling in. They're entering into this marketplace in so many ways, and so I think this just opens up all sorts of opportunities, not just from the transactional perspective of organizations and marketers and advertisers trying to reach them, but really to influence music, film, art, politics, business. I think we're on the cusp of seeing that change that I think we've all known is going to be coming, because I think we see it in our own families, our own households, but now the marketplace is gonna start seeing it.
Amazing. So you were at 10 minutes of 4. So I'll go to the $1 million question, right? The question that is asked at all panels. We make up almost 20% of the population, right? Mm-hmm. We're expected to exceed 2.6 trillion in purchasing power in 3 years, according to Axios. And if Latinos as a group were an independent country, their GDP would be ranked 5th in the world, surpassing UK, India, France. If that's the case, then why are brands still lagging behind, in terms of advertising to them? Like, what do we need to do to move the needle?
Man, so much, right? I mean, education remains, to the earlier question in the beginning of this session, how much do you, an educator and an inspirational speaker to this, audience that's still wishing to make that first move? That's always going to be the case. You have to be smart about approaching it. The lag is, look, it's not easy to jump into a new without having spent the time, the effort, having the right people to adequately analyze and approach the marketplace. So like we said, there's not enough to help pull the trigger on something like this. There needs to be more that voice in there. Spanish language still remains as a important thing because the marketplace is younger and they're consuming everything under the sun. Doesn't mean that the language goes away. It'll still be very much a part of it. And if you want to step into that side of, there's a cost to it. And some companies aren't prepared to take on that cost in favor of not depleting resources into the main area that they're in exchange to test something that for them is still, they're uncertain. They just paralyze themselves from that. Ultimately, the business cases will prove out. But I will say it has gotten better over the last, 5 years or 10 years. We just got RFP'd from like a soy sauce company. Like when, so things are getting better, but it ain't enough. We know, for example, at NBC, and I can speak to it because I worked there for NBC side, there might be 1,100 advertisers. On the Telemundo side, there might be 485. So there's still a lot of work to be done to move over. There's still a lot of high net worth that are not being advertised to by, John Hancock and investment people and, areas that are not focused on. But enough information to make a move is a farce. There's plenty of research, 40 years worth of research that has been supported and backed up year over year. So there's enough out there for you to educate yourself and make a move. But interested in the audience as a segment of ROI model analysis, you'll find they're in the ROI model. They're there. So, you got to take plenty of people like us and Sumi and everyone in the marketplace to help guide you so that, fall on your face, right?
Besides talking to, leadership and organizations about, mentoring young talent, multicultural talent, I that's exactly it, Joe. I say, run the numbers, do the ROI, look at, I'm going to speak. I've been on both sides of the fence, both on the client side and the agency side. And probably the one thing that's been that I've observed over the years of my career is that organizations are usually slow to change for a variety of reasons. Some are just conservative, others are, it could be, they just don't have a sufficient amount of budget. But when it comes to Hispanic, I think the slow evolution has been, I think people still view it, and I say this, the powers to be that control budgets, they put Hispanic within, they judge it by language. It's an either or. Is it English or is it Spanish? And the Hispanic marketplace and population is so much more dynamic and diverse that now language has just become very one-dimensional. They have to do the homework. They have to look at the marketplace. They have to run the numbers, talk to the experts. There are people out there that can help them, but the investments have to be based on what Joe said. It's ROI and taking a risk as well, because it's just not about Spanish. And again, I'm Jackie. I love data. I'm a data guy. I'm a data wonk, but I tell people the story of explaining to one client in particular that I recently had, where I explained to them the shift in the Hispanic population, especially as it pertains to language and immigration status, or what we call nativity, born here in the U.S. versus born in a foreign country. Foreign country, you probably have your Spanish dominant. Born here in the U.S. tend to be either bilingual, bicultural. Just 20 years ago, back in 2000, or 22 years ago now, the ratio of U.S. born to foreign born was 44% of Hispanics were from a foreign country. And then you had 56% were U.S. born. That has completely changed. Now it's 70-30, 70 U.S. born to 30 foreign born. That means, again, these people that I told you that are 18, every 60 seconds, are more than likely were born here in the U.S. So they are bilingual, bicultural. Spanish is very important for them. Their Hispanic heritage is hugely important. But how they're going to be talked to and addressed has to be culturally resonant to them. So it's a lot of work. There's no silver bullet, I guess, is what I'm saying to you, Jackie. But it requires a commitment, investment, and understanding that the marketplace is constantly evolving with Hispanics. It's dynamic. That's why, again, I say I'm so excited for the next 10, 15, 20 years going into the future, because we will see organizations that are going to get it and thrive, and then we're going to see others that are going to stumble and learn the hard way. But it's going to happen. It's just the numbers are there, and it's no turning back.
Future trends, guys. Future predictions. I'm channeling my Walter Mercado, who was an astrologer that we all watched as kids. What are you what are you thinking for the future? Continued growth. I mean, the market is we're growing, we're younger.
That is true. Yeah, no, it's to your point about the $2.3 trillion economy. I'm referring to what I just talked about in terms of the acceleration of the marketplace. One of the things I've also said to people that the birth rate for Hispanics just grew exponentially starting in the mid 80s, going through about the early 2000s. What we're seeing here, and going back to how generations describe themselves, Gen X, Millennial, I think that's one of the reasons also we get kind of tripped up on. When you see this big population of young Hispanics that are becoming adults, turning 18, what we're seeing here right now is the Latino baby boom that's going into adulthood. And when I put in that perspective, that's what I tell my clients. Imagine when companies that saw this baby boomer generation in the 60s that came of age, and all of the investment that went behind it. That's exactly what you're seeing with Hispanics, not necessarily at the total scale of the baby boomers of the 40s, 50s, and 60s, but rather this Hispanic population, I say 25 years and younger, is is the Latino baby boom generation. And so that's what we'll see in the future. And so that $2.3 trillion economy, my estimate would be that probably within the next 10 to 15 years, what's going to reach closer, will exceed 3 trillion, probably going to 4 trillion.
If I can add on top of that, the prediction for me is, let's see how and all the things related to that technological boom that is happening at the same boom is inclusive, affected, and at times led of this marketplace, right? We've always said that the Hispanic market is the skip generation over the desktop and, went straight to mobile because historically, far aggressive with the mobile devices. In many cases, a lot of our connectivity with what we do for a living sometimes resulted in us consuming and utilizing a mobile desktop. So what happens, in the metaverse or in the 5 version of the internet, and how does that play what has been at the leading edge of that type of usage of technology? So it's going to be interesting where the new titans of industry come from. What's the face of those people? If this plays out right, we're going to see more of us in those universes, radio and the advent of regular TV. So that's what's going to be fun to see.
Yeah, my prediction goes back to streaming. I'm just doubling down in that space in the sense of, you mentioned Slumdog Millionaire, Joe, earlier. More of that kind of phenomena for programs, again, that were not necessarily created for a large mass audience, but all of a sudden, because they're available and they're accessible, and the audience really determines what they want to see, then the algorithms feed it to other people, etc. We're going to see more of that rise of those opportunities in their shows really becoming a hit. I do think a big part of it, and again, this is complementary, is continuing to push organizations such as whether it be NBC Universal or any of the media companies and and jail, etc. I mean, you're doing it, Joe, so I guess I'll put you here. But of casting, like 4%, I think is the casting of Latinos that we see on the screen. We need more opportunities in that regard. Because one thing begets the other. Back comment, Roger, of it being complex, there isn't like a silver bullet. It's a continuum and a universe of things that are happening that have to come together for us to keep moving the value of the Latino community forward, for the money to show up. But there has to be opportunities for the content creators and the actors and the talent to really show up as well. So it's all combined. And since we are at time, I'm just going to throw in one last thing, because the World Cup is at the end of the year and I am a soccer fan. I'm going to make a prediction that the final is going to be Argentina contra Alemania, Argentina versus Germany. I'm saying it here. If anybody wants to take bets, I will take phone calls later. But that is my prediction for the World Cup next year, or later this year.
I might back up on that one.
I predict a Latino president in our future. I think that's going to eventually happen in our lifetime.
I think it's going to be Latina.
Latina. I like that even better. I like that.
The way you think, Roger.
I like the way you're thinking. Guys, thank you so much. The amount of gratitude that I have for your time, for your wisdom, for all this fun that we had, and sharing your knowledge with my colleagues at Ben and all the other folks that have joined is tremendous. I value you all. Hope to see you all soon. And there will hopefully eventually be a part 2 to this, maybe in person.
Love that.
Way to do it.
Okay.
Love it.
Thank you guys. Stay safe in Miami. Thank you guys. I appreciate you.
Stay safe. Take care. Bye, Sumi.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.